I'll see you in just a little bit. Have a great time.
Go, Esteban. What a legend. How are we, friends? Oh my God, that was so lame. Let's do that again. How are we? It's amazing what a little repetition will do. Well, hello, I'm Edie. You got the rundown from Esteban. I'm here with a beautiful group of people here. Maybe we'll just do a little round of introductions and then we'll start this whole thing. Just go down the line.
Sure, I'll start. So my name is Isabel Gonzalez Whitaker. I'm Associate Vice President at Moms Clean Air Force and Eco Madres. We're part of the Environmental Defense Fund, and we represent 1.5 million moms, caregivers, and children in the fight for clean air. Thank you so much for having me.
Woo!
I don't know if I can go after that. I'm Dr. Yelda Ools, and I'm the founding CEO of the Center for Scholars and Storytellers, which is at UCLA, and we work to harness the power of entertainment media so the next generation of adolescents can thrive and grow. And we work in the spaces of mental health and authentic and inclusive representation, and climate intersects with all of these things. Thank you.
Snaps for sure. Hi everyone, my name is Carissa Valencia. I am the creator and showrunner of Spirit Rangers. Woo! Thank you. I was just going to share really quick, if you haven't seen Spirit Rangers, it is a preschool animated fantasy series that follows a modern Native American family who live and work in a magical national park. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Carson Smith. I work at Nickelodeon. I head up community efforts. Darian is somewhere out here. She's my partner in crime. There she is, right there. Thank you, Darian. We work primarily in the space of arts education advocacy. So we help kids identify their place in the creative economy and then build that pathway to those jobs. And I think most importantly and simply put, we help kids tell their stories.
Woo!
I'm Bill Nye. I'm a mechanical engineer.
Well, there you go. All right, so before we begin, I've got a handful of questions for all of you, but before we begin, I'm going to go through a bunch of stats that were relayed to us. Wow, words have escaped me. That were relayed to us by our partner in developing this panel, the Children's Media Association. So let's give them a round of applause. All right, so 91% of kids surveyed are concerned about climate change, which means 48 million kids under 12 are already experiencing firsthand effects of climate change. We can all go outside and experience it firsthand ourselves. 74% of parents want information about climate change and climate solutions in children's television shows and popular family films, but only 1.4% of kids' nature-related media has mentioned climate change. And with that being said, 18% of teachers haven't even addressed climate change and climate solutions with students because they're not well versed in the science behind it and feel out of their depth discussing it. So statistically, we're staring at a very large amount of people and a huge audience that desires this kind of content, and yet climate seems to be 1.4% of children's content. So that's why we're here today. We're here to discuss this. We're here to have an open dialogue about the entire thing and talk about how we can change this. And we already did our round of introductions, so screw this card. Well, we'll go backwards this time. So Bill, obviously, we know you. You don't need an introduction. You know that. We all know this. You have done an amazing job over the years of sparking curiosity in all of us about science. So thank you for that. Thank you for your amazing work over the years.
Sure, yes.
So today your work is having an impact on multiple generations. A lot of the kids who watched your content growing up are now having kids of their own. And obviously there are conversations that are being sparked within families and households. So how do you feel your experience hearing from millennials firsthand, and how do you feel those conversations have continued to impact them and how your work has impacted them? Obviously, science is foundational in this conversation and the climate conversation with families. So how do we make learning about climate change exciting and inspiring?
How do you make learning about climate change exciting? Well, a car wreck is exciting. It's a very serious business, and the question I think that every kid asks is, hey, grown-ups, if I may, okay, boomer, what are you doing about this? And it's a very, I imagine, it's a difficult conversation, but it's the same thing. We've grown up, everybody grows up with difficult conversations. And I think, I understand. You want things to be exciting and fun and interesting, and it is, but it's a serious problem. And so you got to talk about it in a serious fashion. And as far as storytelling goes, to me, all the stories about scientists and researchers, or more importantly, engineers, who make discoveries are cool, are amazing, and they're inspirational. And what I would work toward is getting young people excited about making their own discoveries in science. When you have a hammer, every problem is a nail. And so as a mechanical engineer, as an engineer, I'm always looking for a technical solution to whatever it might be. Too much carbon dioxide, too much pollution spread out, too much plastic in the environment. And notice that everybody is in this together. And the big idea, the big story, I want people to, so somebody mentioned the word curious. I guess it was Esteban. Everybody's curious. Every kid starts out curious. Every kid starts out, we all started out as scientists. But the big story, the big thing I want to convey to everybody is now humankind, we humans, are in charge of a whole planet. And this was not a job, it's not a gig that we sought. We just have ended up with 8 point something billion of us living on what's proving to be a pretty small planet. We have to manage it. And for that, it takes understanding, and understanding starts with curiosity. Back to you.
Hey. Well, that is a beautiful segue into my next question for Carson. We discussed last week, we were on the phone, we had a little chat before this panel, and you were talking about how children's innate curiosity and imagination plays a huge role in what you do at Nickelodeon. And so I was curious, would you mind relaying that story and kind of speaking about how you were talking about how kids were observing the same thing that we observe every day, and some would view it as the apocalypse, but children seem to have a totally different perspective on it and a slightly more optimistic perspective on it, just based off of their inherent curiosity.
That's true. I mean, kids are curious. We should all be curious at what keeps us going. To answer your question, a lot of what myself and Darian do is we run these series of high school mentorship programs, which exist here in Los Angeles, Burbank High School, a school in South Central. There's a Los Angeles LUSD program, then we also have a program up in Winnipeg, of all places, where they are dealing with climate change like wild. There's 3 tracks. These kids are they're creating their own series. They're making animated shorts, or they're working in CG in 3D skills workshops. And they're all taught by Nickelodeon employees, volunteer. And what we see at the end of the year when they create these animated films and these series is a lot of their worlds are these dystopian, apocalyptic worlds that are resulting from our poor stewardship of this planet. And whether it be like a group of kids who live in a city that's supposed to be Venice, and they live in these floating houses because the water levels have risen so high, or whether they live in a junkyard with a bunch of mutants because the water and the food and everything else is so tainted. These are the worlds that they inhabit. And we see this time and time again. We had a pitch last week that existed in one of these worlds. These kids created this series across the LAUSD. But the interesting part about it, though, is that these kids, and oftentimes, not in every case, but in most cases, they're thriving, and they're learning to adapt, and they're learning to sort of teach these lessons and have these stories that go on in these worlds. And I always find that really interesting, because I think the takeaway, at least one of the main takeaways I had from the pandemic, was how resilient kids were, right, and how strong. And so that's a lot of what we see, but it's just that point of like, this is their reality. These are the worlds that they're imagining they're going to live in, which is really sad to us, but they somehow seem to find some strength in that. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I realized I didn't even ask you a question. I just love hearing you kind of discuss this, like, the beauty in the innate imagination, because obviously, we're kind of here to talk about the integration of children's content and art and the discussion of climate and solutions. So that was a perfect answer to a question that didn't exist.
Thank you.
Carissa, you are a resident creator here on the planet, or on this panel, and on the
That's
planet.
me
Come
now.
on now,
I'm Hollywood.
She got the whole planet with Spirit Rangers. That's right. And everything you do for Spirit Rangers on Netflix is really amazing. So I wanted to discuss, obviously being one of the first children's shows that actually interweaves climate into the full narrative, which is an amazing feat. So congratulations on that. What was your journey in conceiving the show, and why was it important for you to talk about climate in the context of children's content and media?
Oh, good question. So Spirit Rangers came about inspired by my tribe. So my family is Chumash. We are indigenous to the Santa Barbara region. If you've done some wine tasting in Santa Ynez or Solvang, you've probably passed my casino and our reservation. So growing up as a kid there, I got to hear all these amazing stories of our California wildlife, our plants, our animals, and not only that they were alive, but that they were my relatives. They're my family, we're connected. One of my favorite stories as a little kid was about how the dolphins are our brothers and our sisters. And I love that story because I played water polo as a kid, and I was so in awe of that story that I could be connected to something bigger than myself, really. Like, I was just really inspired by that. So when Spirit Rangers came about, I really wanted to capture that sense of why do we even care for the planet in the first place? Why are we growing up to vote? Why are we, asking all the hard questions? It's because the earth is awesome and we love it. So if I could instill that in a preschooler, then that is exactly what I wanted to do. So another thing that I wanted to do with Spirit Rangers specifically was when I was in development and thinking about the show, it had occurred to me that I had never met an Indigenous park ranger before, which was crazy because we are the original stewards of this land. And I'm thinking about the hikes I would go on with my parents, and they know all the plants, they know the traditional names of the plants, they know a story about the plant. And so in my imaginary world, we were living in a national park and it's run by Indigenous folks. We're seeing Indigenous people in leadership positions. This isn't leathers and feathers, a Western. We're seeing them using drones and telescopes and modern technology existing now using our traditional ecological knowledge, but also existing today. So in the writer's room, specifically coming up with Spirit Rangers, it was really interesting, when we wanted to tackle climate solutions or anything that was a little bit of heady for maybe a 4-year-old. And it kind of came down to us realizing that there is a preschool understanding of climate and climate change. So it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be, because it all comes back to those fundamentals of we did an episode about the wildflowers, and the premise is just don't touch them, just respect them, know their boundaries, and these are all, fundamentals we can all carry with us every day. So I think it kind of all naturally came together that way, and was really fun to work on.
Period. Come on, Spirit Rangers. All right, Dr. Yalda. So you started the incredible Center for Scholars and Storytellers at UCLA. Congratulations. That is amazing.
Tired.
Valid. Girl, have a nap. Take a rest. There are a plethora of things that you do. You have done an amazing job at bridging the gap between researchers, content creators, and young people. You also focus heavily on adolescent development. Especially when it comes to second screens. Obviously, children are always consuming and taking in new forms of media. Outside of television, this takes place on phones and tablets. So talk to me a little bit about what inspired you to create the Center for Scholars and Storytellers.
So I am a former movie executive. I was a senior vice president at MGM making movies. My very first movie I ever got made was Mi Familia, an intergenerational story about Mexican Americans. And I thought, okay, they're going to let me make movies like this. Nope, I had to make superhero movies as I rose up the ladder. And then I got a PhD in developmental psychology after I left the film business at UCLA, studying how media impacts adolescents. And that really inspired me to launch the center to really bridge these two worlds, because I believe researchers and activists and scientists have a lot to offer storytellers. And if we can integrate that science and research, because scientists and researchers, we study how adolescents best flourish and how to maximize positive impact on them, how to minimize harm. And so and I was a kind of a rare scientist because I had been in the film business, so I felt that I could figure out how to translate the science in a way that would be impactful for storytellers. So that's what I did. I launched the center, and I don't think there's enough attention to adolescent programming. And adolescence is a really, really important time. It's now defined ages 10 to 25. So it's a very long span of time. And it is, sorry for those of you that have teenagers, it's going on for a long time. And it's also a time of cognitive flexibility. Their brains are really open, their identity, they're figuring out who they are. They're using media 24/7, and and they care about their friends. So this is a time where media can have the most positive impact, and I think it's really important to think about the messages that you are integrating. And nobody in the business really thinks about adolescence, and we really felt like there needed to be somebody, it's a hard job, to get the industry to start thinking about it. I mean, researchers are used in preschool content. They want to have a positive impact. It's amazing. We need a Spirit Rangers for adolescents, We need something that speaks to adolescents in the same way. So hopefully, I'm happy to talk about second screens later, but hopefully that answers.
Absolutely. No, that was beautiful. I think it's really cool to see someone who is not only well-versed in the film and TV world, but also someone who's very well-versed in the science behind everything that you believe in and everything that you've studied. So it's very cool to be able to really bridge that gap and have a deep and thorough understanding of both fields and be able to utilize them simultaneously.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, my girl, Isabel. It's our time.
That's right. I'm ready.
So you work hands-on with thousands of parents and children who are firsthand experiencing the effect of climate and the environmental crisis. What have you heard from them in terms of what content and resources they wish were available to them and or were better represented in media?
Yeah. I think what we've heard here today so far is reflective of what they want, which is to see themselves. These are stories of families on the front lines, on the fence lines, of natural disasters, of climate shocks. I think I read a statistic today that UNICEF released that said pretty much every child globally will experience one major climate shock a year from here on out. So that could be a wildfire. That could be a hurricane, that could be a flood, that could be a drought, but that could also be a train derailment of vinyl chloride. It spans the entire spectrum of man-made climate disasters. And increasingly, it's not just any child. Some children experience these incidences in multitudes and in pluralities of experiences because of the systemic racism, of systemic injustices, of the circumstances of their lives that put them even closer to these dangers than somebody that is more resourced or more privileged. So those are the families that we represent. And it's hard. And I think that what they really want from a parental perspective is to know that they're not alone and to have the accurate information to be able to distill how to respond and how to act, because acting and taking action is an antidote to despair. I think Spirit Rangers, for example, I think Mr. Nye pioneering this field. Is that okay, doctor?
I pioneered it. No, I didn't, you guys. No, if I can, is it okay to
You can speak
ready to
whenever
go?
you want to speak.
Oh, careful. No, so the
I
Science
never thought
Guy
I'd be
show,
telling Bill Nye that. That's
if you're of a certain age, there was before the Science Guy show was Mr. Wizard.
Yeah, of course.
And yeah, woo, Mr. Wizard, Don Herbert. And he was in black and white. I met him, he was in color, but the show,
Wait, people were in color then?
yeah, it was crazy. And then to your point about storytelling, this and that, we had at that time, does anybody remember Beekman's World? Yeah. All right, so Mr. Wizard and Beekman's World did this thing where they look at this cool thing, we'll blow this up, look at this cool thing. And that had a great effect on me. I watched it every week. Look, I'm fine. No, so, but we had research. We had scientific research about how people respond to storytelling, and it was shown to our satisfaction this is back in the 1900s, back in
I said you were a pioneer.
1993,
so I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
That if you jump from one cool thing to another, if you're already interested in the topic, science, chemistry, microscopic images of the dragonfly larvae, then you're into it. But if you're not so into it and it's on, you may not get, and this is an educator word, you don't get any lift. You don't get any enhancement to your understanding. But by focusing the show on one thing for the full 22 and a half minutes in syndication or 28:46 in PBS, then you'd get more out of it. So that shaped our show. So this is, I think, if I understand it, this is a merging of passion, enthusiasm for blowing stuff up with the science of education.
Right, and the necessity to have climate dialogue be anchored in those experiments or those narratives, right?
So we did a show about the atmosphere, we did a show about climate, we did a show about extreme weather, and each of those episodes would have a little climate thing slipped in there that would be
Smuggling
consistent.
it in.
Say it again?
Smuggling it in.
Well, it's not smuggled in. It's part of this. Is what, if I may I hate saying but you guys, this idea that you're learning and you don't know it, or we're sneaking in this cool information despite the entertainment. So I'm fine, okay? I'm fine. I'm not bitter. I'm over it. It's cool. But I was at the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, and I did what I could to explain to these people that the television show, the Science Guy show, is entertainment first. The information, the science, the fabulous facts, what have you, are not secondary in the sense of importance, but first it's got to be entertaining. No, Bill, you are speaking dichotomously. What? I'm doing what? And so it just made me crazy, this fundamental lack of understanding. It's a TV show, people. It's got to be entertaining first, and that's why you guys, if I understand it, you guys are embracing this idea of storytelling.
Well, and just to put a point on my note on
Eat the mic.
Before you so charmingly interrupted me, back to me. Thank you. And to your point, like, it doesn't need to be like packaged and disguised anymore. Children are talking about this all the time. I mean, my son, who is 11, gets air quality alerts on his phone, right? There is no disguising this, and there's no need to. And in fact, it does more harm when you try to, essentially suppress the real narrative as you're trying to normalize this necessity for adaptation, because we're beyond mitigation. So I think to your question originally, they want information, they want to know how to act, they want to be seen, and they want and are open to learning more. And it does not need to be smuggled
in.
Snuggled.
Yeah, and that
Snuggled.
actually, can I jump in? Because that actually speaks to the second screen thing, is because, so basically, we all know that when, all of us do it, but adolescents in particular, you're watching the TV screen and you have another screen that you're looking up things. And you can basically expand upon, because if someone's telling an entertaining show, they can't stop in the middle of it and give you the information and the facts. They have to entertain you, they have to tell a story. But on this second screen, which can be linked to the primary story, and you can tell a story on social media with the actor, or you can create some kind of way that they can search for content about the story, you can put in all the information that they need, how to act, how to make them feel hopeful. You can use your platform to get kids to that, tell them where to go to do something, and then you're really combining the best of storytelling, because we are now well beyond the 1900s. We are in 2024, and we can use technology to connect to the storytelling and help people who want to use and get inspired and excited or enraged and angry with what they're seeing, but emotionally engaged, tell them how to do something. And that's what the second screen concept is.
So that's for adolescents. What
For
about,
anyone.
So even for preschoolers.
Moms of preschoolers.
Yeah, I feel like for preschool, there is definitely a research aspect that we
And
do
dads.
that support. Yeah,
Not to be sexist.
parents. I forgot the question now. Sorry, it just escaped me.
Bill, you seem to be pondering something quite
Well, it's just that.
intently.
So I'm watching the TV, and I got my phone, and I want to know if the Sioux River flows north into Hudson Bay or south into Mississippi. And you're saying I will look at my phone while the show's on, and miss stuff that the show is doing.
Yeah, that is,
Okay.
that is
And
the
so
one thing that,
I understand.
or you could do it after the show is over, which some people do.
Oh, I'm asking what do they do, not what are they supposed to do. And then secondly, does the same thing apply to preschoolers?
No. Preschoolers will look at a screen, and I don't think they blink for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
They're not blinking. Yeah,
Yeah.
you have them hooked. You have that responsibility for 20 minutes to entertain them, tell a great story, and hopefully get them to love the planet.
And then they'll watch that same thing 2,000 times.
2,000 times. Great audience, preschoolers.
The best.
But could you get their parents who might have to suffer through a few of those
Hey,
episodes?
they're suffering, no.
No, at Nick, we don't let them suffer.
So that's why it's important to have a good song.
Absolutely.
I'm not kidding. No, compare and contrast SpongeBob, porous and yellow is he, with Little Rabbit Frou-Frou. Frou-Frou? I've forgotten. I've suppressed it finally. One is cool and the other is just crazy making. And so I digress, but the song is really important.
That's what we need, a climate song.
Oh, so, okay.
Here we go.
You guys, I am right there, all right? I'm sure in here are artists, musicians who know what you're doing. The melody is the hard part. If I had a nickel, get the CD, the guy's band, he's done a blues song about climate. I have 24 of those, 8-bar blues about climate. It's the melody's the hard part. Back to you.
We need Taylor Swift to write a song about it.
Sure.
It was the mixed response
God,
from
you didn't have
everyone about that. Well, this is y'all are still giggling about this one. All right, eat it up. Come on, Taylor. It's very fascinating. I think obviously, everyone here comes from very different backgrounds, and I think it's important to take into consideration, obviously, like second screens are a much greater conversation with ages 10 to 25. Obviously, the way you would approach the psychology behind a preschooler would look very, very different than a teenager. But how do we feel, and this is an open-ended conversation for whoever wants to take this question, but how do we feel about the importance of the tone in which things are represented? Obviously, this is a very heavy subject matter, and it's something that can very easily evoke anxiety for many people and a lot of children and a lot of teens. And there's a fine balance, right? Where it's when we feel a fire under our butts, that's when we tend to take action. But also when the fire is a little too hot, then we get burned. So how do we strike that balance for both, younger children and then people who are aging towards the more adolescent age?
Well, on our show, I say if this keeps up, we had a demonstration that works pretty well where we filled an aquarium or terrarium, a plexiglass box with carbon dioxide, and it gets a little warmer than the plexiglass box without carbon dioxide. I said if this keeps going, things will get weird, and that was my idea to hand it off to the grown-ups. If this keeps going, it's going to get weird. I didn't overtly say, ask your parents why they're not doing anything. But it is pause for thought, because the charming thing or the compelling thing about live action science demonstrations is you can show an effect, and it's not you're not taking my word for it. But you can't do that with everything. Whereas in storytelling, you have a point that you're building to. Yeah. Back to you. Solve this problem.
I'm going to jump in.
Throwing it back to me.
I'm going to catch it. Okay.
Hey, intercepted by Carissa.
Yeah. So thinking about that is so interesting because I recently watched Furiosa, which was so good and scared me into being like, whoa, this is our future. But I couldn't exactly do a Mad Max preschool Spirit Rangers episode.
I don't know, if I were a preschool, I'd be like, this is fire.
Yeah, there's probably some preschoolers there, yeah. But a lot of them
Standards and practices.
Yes, there are exactly.
But you guys, you have to be optimistic. I'm not changing the subject. Humankind, we have to be optimistic. If you're not optimistic, you're not going to get anything done.
Yeah.
You think the Edmonton Oilers went in that game last night thinking they were going to lose? They did, but they didn't think they were going to. That's a message. I'm not sure that's a story to be told, but that's a message. You're not going to accomplish anything if you're not optimistic, if you don't feel you can. However, there are going to be setbacks, and that's part of the deal.
I think for us I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I was going to just quickly finish my thought there, which was, I was like, what was it?
You're talking about Mad Max.
Yes, I was talking about Mad. Yes, okay, that's what I was going to say was I am from the Bill Nye generation. I'm a millennial. And something I loved about Bill's show was humor and that everybody can be a scientist. I feel like that was something that I have carried with me because I am not good at science or math, but I can still be because we're humans, we are scientists. We are this. So I think like in the preschool space specifically, we have 90% positive stories of like, how can we protect the wildflowers? How can we conserve water? But every episode we did, or every season we did one big finale of like something kind of scary, but the kids were able to save the day. And one episode that I was really proud of was there was a polar bear who got trapped in California, needed to get back home. Usually the Spirit Rangers save the day at the end of the episode, but this was a bigger task. So in this episode, we worked with our Netflix Green Eco team and decided that it was not on the Spirit Rangers to solve the problem here. They invited their parents in. This is everybody's problem. So like they did not have to carry the weight of the world on their shoulders, they can't do it. This is our problem too. So that was something I was really, really proud of to get out there. Yeah.
First of all, I just have to applaud like the intergenerationalism that episode captured, because I do think that in this movement that is reflective of sort of the success that we need to harness in order to move forward. But you said something about striking the right balance, right? And I think that we walk that line every day at Mom's Clean Air Force, where we're trying to drive incredible urgency and this feeling that the stakes are really high, but this idea that we can still have hope and that we have to celebrate the wins, of which, I think as storytellers, and I was a journalist before I came did I just lose my mic? Anyway, before I came to this position, you know, the drama, the tension points, you win, right? Like it's harder for the hopeful stories to break through the noise of the tragic stories, right? But I think collectively we have to work toward a goal of elevating the hopeful stories in order to provide inspiration for action.
And I also think it's like a mental health, like we study mental health, and there's so much eco-anxiety, and so many young people feel despair and feel like there's nothing to do. And research shows that fear-based messaging is less effective. It grabs more attention, but it's less effective in promoting action, because you do feel despair. You do feel, how can I, just one person, do something? So we need to figure out a way to have solutions like that's like such a beautiful story and a beautiful way to do it, so that people have, and that's where you could use second screens with the parents for the younger people, and also to help people have a way to understand how to work themselves out of it. And I think that a lot of the stories that have been out there, even in fictional stories, have been these sort of like big disasters, dystopian futures with hopeful endings. But we need to figure out ways to integrate hope into the storytelling, and also just weave it into every story. It doesn't have to be a climate change story. You know, in Hollywood, there's a very special episode, you know, and it doesn't have to be that. Just weave it in naturally into every single story, because sustainability is what we need in our lives. And if we can do that in every single show and work with experts that understand, you know, either development, if it's, you know, young people in preschool or adolescence, you know, or that understand the science, so you can integrate it in a way that empowers young people but is also accurate.
I think I think one of the things that we don't do enough of is, and I'm not sure the mechanism for all of this. If it's like a kid story corps, or it's like a kid's version of the Kiss Army. If anyone remembers the Kiss Army here, anybody? Bill, Kiss Army? Come on.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. But I mean, I think that we always talk at kids, and we also talk to kids, but we don't also listen to kids and hear from kids specifically. And there needs to be some sort of mechanism for children to get out there. And we have Greta, you know, and she gets a ton of grief for what she's trying to do. But we need to find more and more outlets, more and more resources, more and more opportunities for kids to talk to their parents, talk to the world, talk to everyone about how terrified they are about this future, and how we can hopefully make some changes to ultimately alter that.
Is that something you can do with a website associated with the show, the second screen? Get a kid to send in his or her question?
Yeah, you could put a QR code at the end. You know what that is?
Is it done? Yeah.
Oh, no, I think it needs to be done.
There, do the, yes.
Come on, we're in the 2024. We know we have the technology to do these things.
But would it be, so the other question I have, I'm of a certain age, I grew up with anxiety about nuclear war. And there was also that lack of, you didn't feel empowered as a kid to do anything about it. Is there an analog there? Is there a lesson learned from that time?
That's a good point.
I thought you were going to go, sure, well, here it is.
Yeah, that's the whole idea where they told us we could just get underneath the desk and we'd be cool. Yeah.
Oh, so we just got to find a really big desk.
Political will. So I don't know, because this is a Hollywood. You grew up with the news around. Was the media talking a lot, and shows and fictional shows about nuclear war?
Oh my goodness. You guys,
They still are.
everybody, science fiction is all about the apocalypse. I mean, come on.
Like Fallout recently.
I mean,
I love
so good.
the apocalyptic stories go back to the beginning of stories.
Twilight Zone.
Yeah, well, the Twilight Zone, and then the Time Machine, and 1984, and
So I think, there is evidence that shows and fictional shows, non-fictional shows, if they get hearts and minds behind the topic, and then that raises the consciousness of everyone. That can turn into political will, and obviously there was political will dealing with the nuclear fallout. And we talk about the Marriage Equality Act, which was the change in support for LGBTQ queer identities has been one of the quickest ever, and it resulted in the Supreme Court pushing the Marriage Equality Act. And that was reflected in the content and in the shows, and Joe Biden credits Will and Grace. I credit Glee. There were all these different shows that really normalized, love is love. And that changed the way people saw, love. And then that shifted policy. And so that is how storytelling can shift culture.
Period.
Yes, good.
So let's do it.
How did the West get through the threat of nuclear war? How did that taper off? It seems to me it was, after a while, people sort of took a meeting. We got a lot of weapons here. We better not use them. And thank goodness, that conflict with Russia is done. That's finally resolved. So that anxiety, I guess, got set aside. I just wonder if it's been studied. I did. Gee whiz, sorry. Yeah, no, he's trying to kill him.
Yeah, we've taken a turn for sure.
But I claim that there's an analog to the anxiety I grew up with, the not being empowered end of the world, not being empowered end of the world in the modern time.
And I think perhaps a difference now is that there are, clearly, you've carried that anxiety with you. So you think about children today who are facing climate anxiety and may carry that with them unless we mitigate and intercept, which I think now is more normalized than perhaps it was a few decades ago or even a decade ago. So I think knowing and having that precedent will hopefully help inform how we move forward now.
Well, the other thing that was different, there was an enemy. Like there was us and them. But now it's us and us, more of us.
Yeah, and I was going to say, though, because there were only a few people that had access to the bombs, right? Like you sitting in there was no path for you to take as a kid.
Yeah, we had a fallout shelter. We had water in bottles, hoping that that you just stay inside for 24 hours, all the dust settles, and then it's cool to go outside. And then we had radios and extra batteries and this and that.
Well,
Probably completely ineffective.
I'd argue there is an enemy, right? And it's oil and gas industry.
Well,
right. So,
except
I don't know if we need to put a clearer face on it or some more propaganda muscle behind it, but that is the enemy.
But we all got here either in gas-powered vehicles or, everything in this room owes its presence to our success with fossil fuels. We just got to stop doing it. Thank you, Bill. That's great. So this before we go, vote, everybody. Please vote.
Voting helps.
Well, and I think that's the beauty in conversations like this is obviously the thing that catalyzes this whole conversation is how children's media and the intersection between children's media and climate solutions and conversations but play a huge role in how we move forward, not just as children, but as adults, and the intergenerational conversations, how crucial they are and important they are, whether you're in preschool and just talking to your parents about how much you love this episode and how you discuss solutions about climate change, or how something you saw that popped up on your phone about the air quality is slightly concerning, and the next thing you know, you're on social media and you're being guided in a new direction of education and ideas and knowledge, and that's being shared with friends, which then gets shared on with parents, which then gets shared with teachers, and so on and so forth in this waterfall of conversation. So thank you all so much for being here and helping enlighten us in the beauty of art and media and children and science and where they all intersect. Before we go, is there any last little piece of information, advice, resources, anything that you guys would like to point us in the direction of?
Be optimistic.
Hopeful.
Talk about climate change the way we talk about, if we were talking about climate change the way we talk about everything else, we'd be doing something. And then vote.
And
You, sir, there's a guy here. He looks to be 8. Yeah. He just walked. Make sure the grown-ups in your life vote. Go get them. Right on.
And I would say be curious. We started with that and being curious and listen to the frickin' science. Like, so many times I have people give me anecdotal evidence and I know all the science and they're like, no, you're wrong because my N of 1. So listen to scientists, listen to the research and be hopeful and be curious.
I love that.
And if I can just add, I do think it's really important to vote. Clearly, it's critical to vote. But for the 8-year-old in the audience, civic engagement can start now. Take your children to school board meetings. Policy change works. There are countries in this world that have banned single-use plastics. It can be done. I personally, and I'll just take this opportunity, and it's probably a good thing that I'm not a showrunner or creative in this way, I'd love to see more civic engagement storylines. Make that happen and make it not boring, because it's not boring and it's so incredibly important.
It is. It's like Hamilton, which did great.
Yes, there you go.
Yes, Abbott Elementary. I'm just going to quickly chime in and just say, do not leave Indigenous folks out of the conversation. We are here. I would recommend looking up whose land you're on and looking who are the tribal leaders that you can point to if you're creating and you're pitching a show that deals with climate, the apocalypse. Include us in your convo too.
One last thing, and I think someone's going to talk about this tomorrow, but I think the idea is that we have this sort of combative nature where we, chastise and scold, and I think what we need to do more of is ask people to join us in those ways, and also acknowledge that, as Yvon Chouinard said in one of his books, like we're all part of the problem. So if we all make these small changes collectively at a grassroots level, we can really have impact. But I think the idea is like we have to stop going after each other in this vein and pointing fingers, because we're all guilty, as you mentioned. We're all guilty of having a negative impact. So, that's kind of a kumbaya moment. But let's do that.
Right?
Beautiful. Thank you guys so much, Bill, Carson, Carissa, Dr. Yalda, Isabel. Thank you so much for being here today. Beautiful conversation.
Carissa, nicely done.
Thank you so much. Keep it going for the panel. Amazing. I know they want to take a quick photo, right? I've been told. Do you want to? But I love it. This is the Hollywood Climate Summit. Anything can happen. Conversation on children's media can turn to nuclear holocaust. Here's what's gonna happen. Okay, they're gonna take a photo. Oh my gosh, and we're gonna do an activity. Okay, are you ready? This is what's gonna happen. And panelists, the moment you're free, I would love for you to join. Okay, you are going to find a partner or a group of 3. Okay. So find a partner or a group of 3. Make sure everyone has a partner. Make sure everyone has a partner. I'll get out of pictures and see you taking pictures. You've got, group of 3 is perfect. You've got 10 seconds. Find a partner. This activity is going to take 30 seconds. Panelists, if you want to. Yeah, exactly. Partners, group of 3. Perfect. Yeah, thank you. And here's what's going to happen. Okay? One of the closing messages was about optimism, and something I think children do really well is they laugh a lot and they enjoy that. So we're gonna practice 2 things before our break, okay? And you and your partner are now in a competition. And it is a fast smile competition. So on the count of 3, here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna turn and face your partner, and you're gonna see which one of you can smile the most amount of times in 10 seconds. So I will count down from 10, and you will see how many times you can smile. This is important. This is important. Are you ready? This is important. You have to go full no smile. to full smile. So it might look like this. You might be like, while staring at your partner. Keep track of how many smiles you're smiling. Your partner will keep track, and we'll see who wins, okay? So, perfect partners. On the count of 3, you've got 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1, go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bow, 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 bow. Amazing work. Amazing work. Thank you, panelists. We have, our next session is at 7:30. There is food and drink downstairs. See you there. If you meet someone new, ask them how many times they smiled in that competition. We'll see you in 20 minutes, 25 minutes. We'll see you at 7:30. Have a wonderful time. Smile a lot. You're now good at it. You've got that.